I run a little group inside autotrader.com that really functions a bit like a startup. There's 6 of us on the team. I've got a couple of developers. We've got somebody who does a lot of our designing, a lot of our storytelling. And we've got some folks who do a lot of research for us. And we produced an app for the Leap Motion device. Have you guys heard of Leap Motion? And we made the front page of Mashable today. So I was pretty stoked by that. It's kind of fun, though, that at a company like AutoTrader, you can still get that kick and that buzz. I mean, you should have seen everybody's faces when we were like the top rising thing on Mashable. It was really cool. And one of the guys was sat there hitting refresh going, 453 shares, 468 shares. And I was like, it was awesome. It was really, really cool. So I wanted to kind of talk about that area that bridges between the storytelling and the business side. Where I work in lots of big software companies, that's called product management. And product management's a weird discipline in that there's no college courses on product management. You're just expected to kind of somehow organically figure it out. And I think to the question about, if you're a technical person, should you go get an MBA? This is really the kind of career path that makes really great use of that. If you can speak technical and you can speak the business side, that's a hugely valuable role. And I honestly think that just like coders, just like good designers, I honestly think product managers are born. I think that's something you just come with in the world. You can sort of understand the technology side and you can understand the business side and you can switch between those different things, and it's really a valuable thing. So I wanted to go through 10 lessons I've learned, little anecdotes, and share with you some experiences and maybe give you guys some cause to ask a couple of good questions. So the first part is adventures or misadventures in product management. And so these are really sort of challenges that I faced in various roles within different sized companies. And I've worked at companies that were 30 people big, 150 people big. When I joined AutoTrader, we were just around 1,000. Subsequent to some acquisitions, we're about 3,500 right now. So we'll save the names to protect the innocent, as they say. The first thing I learned as a product manager, and this isn't actually a role that's kind of explicitly represented on your diagram, is that of project management. We've sort of done a lot of really good development work, lots of good ideas, but oftentimes the thing that's caused us to fail is that we're not very good at organizing ourselves. So within your team, find somebody who's really, really good at keeping spreadsheets to organize things and keep track of time and break things down into tasks. Because if you don't do that, you'll just keep going and going and going and you won't know when to stop. So you've really got to have somebody who's good at that. And actually this book, I'm not sure if it's even in print, but what is print, right? It's The Art of Project Management, and it's a really good pragmatic look at the field. You don't need someone who's like a qualified, certified project manager on the team, but understand what project management is, manage your own time, manage the time of people around you, find someone on your team that's good at that, and get them working on that area. The next is really the value of design. I can't tell you, it was really weird. One of the first software companies I worked at, we would get all the way into coding, we would get our hands dirty writing code before we realized we'd better actually step back and design this thing. And that sounds really weird, but it was just so easy to throw things together on the screen and to prototype stuff. You never actually stepped back and said, how's this going to work and what's it going to solve? And so that was a hugely, hugely important part of what we learned. Make sure that you build to a quality that you would want to receive yourselves. There was a really interesting article on Wired, I think it was either today or yesterday, about a lady who runs a group at Google that builds all their internal engineering software. So Google develops all of their stuff on their own software that they wrote. And up to the point where she joined the organization, it was really hard to use and it wasn't user-friendly. And she realized we've got to build products for ourselves like we would want them built for other people. And so I had a situation where we built this really great app. And it ran great on our demo machine, and I could show it off. I could really spin the thing well. And we got to a customer site to install it, and 8 hours later, with this little desktop app, we still couldn't get it running. And so really it sort of caused us to step back and say, how do you do these things in a way that we would want to receive them? Polish and fit and finish are really, really important in convincing someone you're building a quality product. understanding terms and understanding what the other side of the table is talking about is really important in product management. I've got a Ford dealership up here because where I currently work, we wanted to put a search function on the site that allowed consumers to find dealerships by make. Now, if I say that I think I want to find a Ford dealership, to me that means a dealership with a really big blue oval outside that says Ford on it. We had a whole contingent in the company that was convinced it meant that you had a Ford car on your dealership lot. Well, lots of little tiny independent dealers have lots of old Fords on their lot, but to me they're not Ford dealers, and we went round and round and round on that. And so understanding early on what your definition of your terms are, whether you're talking about the same thing, when you say that, can I just get a clarification on what you mean, can be really, really helpful. And then the fifth one for my missteps is this idea of the reality distortion field. So there's always a good Dilbert cartoon to be had. This Dilbert cartoon talks a little bit about the Steve Jobs reality distortion field where you can sell anything. But I actually had a guy I worked for once who berated me. He was really upset with me once, and I was like, why are you upset with me? He goes, well, you didn't deliver those documents to me that you said you were going to deliver. And I was like, yeah, I did. I gave them to you like a week ago. He goes, well, my perception is that you didn't deliver those documents, and so therefore my reality is that you didn't deliver them. And I was like, okay, you're like the most extreme case of somebody having this kind of, I imagine the world how it is and that's how it is. But you've got to be aware of that. You've got to be aware of the fact that people have perceptions and that you have to work within their perceptions. So I was like, okay, if that's your perception, I'll just reprint them out and I'll put them on your desk. And they were there about an hour later. But I think those sort of things are really important. Again, product management is about getting inside other people's heads. So the second list of 5 is really some positive stories about how, by understanding who you're working with and working for, you can really win folks over. The first is this fact that a product manager is in this weird situation. You're expected to be the best listener in the world. You're supposed to collect everything that the market needs, but you're also supposed to be the expert on it as well. And I always think of Steve Jobs when I think of this, because he was well known as being somebody who really knew what was going on. But there's this wonderful video that I want to show you a short clip of, and it's Johnny Ive, who's the head of design now at the company, talking about Steve Jobs a couple of weeks after he passed away. And he makes a reference to Steve Jobs being a good listener. And it just blew my mind, because no one probably ever thought of him as a good listener. So we're going to go really low tech here.
I'm going to go missing. You go and put
So this is Johnny Ive.
You see, I think he, better than anyone, understood that while ideas ultimately
See if I can get the volume up.
so powerful, they begin as fragile, barely formed thoughts, so easily missed, so easily compromised, so easily just... You see, I think he, better than anyone, understood that while ideas ultimately can be so powerful, they begin as fragile, barely formed thoughts, so easily missed, so easily compromised, so easily just squished. I love the way that he listened so intently. I loved his perception, his remarkable sensitivity, and his surgically precise.
So I thought it was kind of interesting. This is somebody who knows Steve Jobs better than anybody else, and he describes him as an amazingly good listener. And I think that's really key. You can only be the smartest person in the room if you've taken the time to listen to all the great opinions around you and put them together into a view that you've uniquely created. I found out very quickly in customer interactions that PowerPoint kills customer conversations. And I still experience this to this day. Just 2 weeks ago, I was in a conversation with a startup, and they were absolutely insistent on going through their PowerPoint deck with me. And I'm like, I get what you do. I spent an hour researching you before we met. You've got 20 minutes to talk to me. Why are you insisting on going through your PowerPoint slides? And it's so much better if you let the customer talk first and then find out what the common ground is and how you can share ideas. So very quickly, I ended up ditching PowerPoint in customer conversations. And it's not about what I have to tell you, it's about what you have to tell me. And when I understand you, I'll then mold what I have to match what you want to hear. So there's an element of pitch and spin, but there's also a matter of listening as well. This last one, this eighth one is about the idea of the fact that you can enter a business and become an expert in it even if you don't have that track record and history. So this is an example from a company I used to work at, and we were not pipeline engineers in the oil and gas pipeline industry, but we became the people that the government looked to describe how to implement their regulations. So you had professional engineers, you had the government turning to this bunch of people at this startup that had figured this out and saying, that's how you do it. So they came up with a regulation with a nice little diagram in it, and they said to everyone, this is how you should do this assessment of how far a pipeline would blow up and hurt a school. And we said, but you can't actually process that. So we came up with a method, we defined how it worked, we described it to the industry, and everyone went, oh. And it was the intersection of our understanding of mapping technology and their needs that led to this new solution. And there are lots and lots of opportunities to do that in the industry, in lots of different fields. You can come in not knowing anything about an industry, but revolutionize how it works by understanding it from a different angle. The ninth one's simple, and this was taking a CEO who was well entrenched in his view of the market and showing him some data points that absolutely in 15 minutes transformed his view of his business, billion-dollar business. 2 or 3 data points, carefully collected, carefully selected, and all of a sudden his perceptions are changed and we move into a new era. And I think this is really key. You've got to be selective with what you choose. You've got to have credible facts. You've got to be able to back them up. But oftentimes a couple of data points can really win folks over. And then the last one is sometimes your idea, it's not the right time for your idea. I've got ideas that are now 4 or 5 years old where I currently work, and we're just seeing them hit the point where they're the right time for the company to work. So this is an electric car. This is the Tesla Model S. People have been trying to build electric cars successfully for decades and decades, and now is the time when they're now a good idea. Everything's fitting into place. So sometimes you'll have an idea and you'll test it and it won't work. Don't let anybody tell you 5 years later, oh, we tried that once, it didn't work. Now may be the time for that idea. So keep those ideas fresh in your mind and keep them in your back pocket, and one day the idea might be viable. But be perfectly okay with the fact that you may be ahead of the market. You may have an idea that we're not quite ready for yet.